All right, and welcome into the Betting Pros College Football Show. It is rivalry week and the final week of the college football regular season. Today, we take a first look at week 14 and make our early picks and line movement predictions. I'm your host, Seth Woolcock, and I'm absolutely still reeling from the weirdest weekend of football I can remember, maybe ever. Today, I'm joined by my partner in crime, Scott Bogman. Oof, Boggs, how you doing today after getting done dirty by those no good Buckeyes? I told you, I don't even think I'm going to make it into the show. I did make it. It must go on. How you doing? I'm here with you.
Yeah, I mean, 3-4 this week on my official pick, so under 500 again. Not the best week, but I was looking at reactions on Twitter and hearing people like you speak about it, and it seems like 3-4 and not completely nuking my bank account is pretty successful for what this week was. I mean, look, we can both at least say Texas won, Penn State won, so
right.
We're on the right trajectory here still. That's what matters, right? But we're trying to win you some money in rivalry week in the last week of the season here, and I wish I could afford to go to this Texas A&M game. I mean, I could, but I don't want to sell a kidney to get into that stadium. So I looked today before the fees on a lot of those places. It was like $600. So yeah, I'm gonna be watching that one from my couch. So.
Wow. Well, hey, maybe we'll win you a little bit of money this week, and maybe you can go to a playoff game here in a couple weeks. What do you think?
I would love that. Let's do that one. I would much rather do that.
All right, and we've got a loaded program for y'all. Week 14 rankings, movement, reaction as well, plus an early handicap of the biggest games for this next upcoming slate. Thanks to everyone who continues to hang out with us all season. We see it. We appreciate it. The easiest way to support us is like this video if you enjoy this type of content. Plus, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you want to win a signed Aaron Jones Minnesota Vikings jersey for free, courtesy of our friends over at pristineauction.com, all you have to do is subscribe to the Betting Pros YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment below on any of our videos, and that's it. We will be announcing a winner right here on the channel, so make sure you hit those notifications. Those are going to go ding, and then we'll make sure we clue you in on whoever wins this great Aaron Jones jersey. Ooh, he had a good week in fantasy too, Boggs. Aaron Jones.
He did. No, it was getting weird with the Cam Akers splitting a bunch of carries with him, but I think that was because he was nicked up a little bit. So glad to see him getting rolling and getting his full due as he deserves.
Yeah, Minnesota Vikings gear always is sick too. They have one of the best uniforms. I think I love the purple and the yellow. So make sure you guys are subscribing, helping us out here. We greatly appreciate it. Boggs, let's look back at week 13. It was full of upsets, full of heartbreak. Ole Miss, they go down to Florida 24-17 in the Swamp. Ohio State, they end Indiana's undefeated bid 38-15. Penn State, they survive in Minneapolis 26-25. Kansas upsets Colorado 37-21. Yeah, talk about a heartbreaker on that one. Arizona State beats BYU 28-23. Notre Dame takes down Army. I was wrong, 49-14. Auburn upsets A&M 43-41. Didn't know Auburn could score that many points. And maybe the shocker of them all, and maybe the shocker of all season, OU beats Bama in Norman 24-3. Holy shnikes, Boggs. I feel like it's easier just at this point to ask you what didn't surprise you from week 13.
I mean, Notre Dame. That's about it. I was not shocked by that Notre Dame outcome, but yeah, I mean, OU bowing up. And honestly, we almost took that game off the sheet at the end because I was like, this is just, we know what Oklahoma is, and they're not anything this year, and they just spanked Alabama. Milroe just had the worst game. I was surprised at the ease with which Ohio State beat Indiana. I wasn't surprised that they won, and I wasn't surprised that they covered as much, but there was, after that first run, that first drive, the scripted drive, worked for Indiana. Nothing else worked the rest of the day. It was just that Ohio State defense put the clamps on. Mm-hmm. I cannot believe how different Ole Miss has been on the road versus at home this year, and that bit them again in the Swamp. And, think about this Florida team going into next year. Now you can, you don't have to spend all that money on firing your coach. You can spend it on getting some offensive linemen and some playmakers
Yeah.
around DJ Lagway. So, that was really impressive to see. Minnesota gave you the scare, but you guys won. Texas looked good. They had to, the cheap shot in Kansas was surprising, but they were up big before that, and they have been slashing through everybody Kansas has recently. So all they got to do is win this week to get to a bowl game. Pretty impressive there. But yeah, there was a lot of shocking things. A lot of, things have to go right to get to, some of these conference championships are just so crazy. Some of them are great. Like Texas A&M, you win, you go to the SEC title game. That's it. But in the Big 12, if there's a waning moon on Tuesday with, Saturn rising, then Kansas State gets in or Iowa State gets it's just some of these scenarios are wild. So there is still a lot to be determined for the playoff, even, coming up to the final week of the season here.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. We've seen the rankings shift on the AP side of things. We'll see what the College Football Playoff Committee delivers for us on Tuesday. With Ole Miss and Bama both losing, do you think this now opens the door that both Miami and SMU could make it in if both win this next week? Make it to that title game, Boggs?
SMU's in. Miami has to win, and if they lose, Clemson can't get in, but Clemson might lose to South Carolina.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think that the ACC is probably getting their one team. I don't know. The Big 12 might only get one team too, though. Indiana's got a shot now too. I think Indiana. I think before this week, we think Alabama wins, and there's still a bunch of different scenarios to get to the SEC title game, right? But they lost, and Ole Miss lost. So I think Indiana's in now.
If they take care of business at Purdue, yeah.
If you can't beat Purdue, you don't deserve to be in. So yes, as long as they beat Purdue. Which Purdue gave Illinois a scare earlier this year. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. They're definitely not as bad as their record, but they're not good. So, I think Indiana is definitely in. I don't know about the rest of it. The rest of it is just I'm not even going to try to make a prediction. We'll just make predictions when we see the games. Let's do that.
All right, fair enough. Let's open up the games on Black Friday with the Egg Bowl. Mississippi State finds themselves as 26-point dogs against the 15th-ranked Ole Miss Rebels. The Rebs, they're coming off that heartbreaking 24-17 loss to the Gators. They outgained the Gators by 120 yards, but were 3 for 14 on third down, 5 turnovers, 3 of those coming on turnovers on downs. Still, the Rebs, they've only failed to cover in their 3 losses this season. Every other time they've covered when they've won. They have the top passing offense, the second best rushing defense in the country as well. The Bulldogs, they are dead last in the SEC, 0-7 in conference play, but they have covered in all 4 of their games this season, Boggs, when double-digit dogs. I know you've played them a lot in that scenario. That includes games against the likes of Texas, Georgia, A&M, Tennessee. Does that trend continue, and where do you think we see this line move, my friend?
Yeah, I think it's opening up because last night it was 25.5. Today it's 26. I see 26.5 in a lot of spots as well. So I think it's opening up towards Ole Miss. People think we're going to get this angry Ole Miss team. I just don't see it. If you heard Lane Kiffin speaking, after that game, he looked miserable. He looked so upset. I've never seen a quieter press conference where it looked like the coach was about to cry. It was tough. It was tough to see. And I don't know. I think that I think I'm going to take the Bulldogs here. This is too many points. They've been keeping these games close. And like you said, in these big games at Texas, they're 37.5-point dogs. That Texas didn't even score 37 points. That game was 35-13. Against Georgia, 33.5-point dogs. They lost by 10. Tennessee, 25.5-point dogs. They lost by 19. The Egg Bowl hasn't had a game decided by 10 or more points since 2018, and that was a Mississippi State win, 35-3. And Ole Miss hasn't covered 20-plus points in an Egg Bowl since 2008 when it was Snead throwing to Mike Wallace and Dexter McCluster was there. So this Egg Bowl is a contentious rivalry. Yeah, we enjoyed a couple of years of Mike Wallace in Pittsburgh for sure.
Yeah.
But give me the Dogs to cover another big line here. I'll take the under as well, too, because we see Mississippi State hold the ball. That's their whole deal in this game is if we're going to make it close, we need to keep that offense on the sideline. They're going to keep passing. They're going to pass the ball, which could mean like, look, this looks like the Ole Miss-Arkansas game, and Ole Miss just rolls if they do get kind of snowballing like they do. But I don't know. Jackson Dart seems depressed. He was crying on the sideline. Lane Kiffin looked like he was going to cry in the press conference. And we've seen, Iowa State let the loss to Texas Tech turn into 2. I think that we're kind of seeing the same thing with Ole Miss. I don't think they're going to lose, but I definitely don't like them to cover more than 20 points in this game.
Yeah, I love the stat you threw out about nobody winning this game by more than 10 points in the past 5 games. I think that's something important, something we need to keep in mind here as we're betting this one. Let's stay on Friday, and then let's head to Athens, where the 6th-ranked Georgia Bulldogs are 19.5-point favorites over the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. The Dogs, they now control their own fate to get to the SEC Championship. However, they are just 3-8 ATS, and they were in a tight one against UMass for a second last week until they scored 4 straight touchdowns in the second half. Tech, meanwhile, they are 5-1 ATS, but they do have back-to-back outright wins over Miami and NC State. They've been playing better of late. Boggs, can you trust Georgia in a rivalry game as nearly a 3-touchdown favorite?
No, I don't. I think, can Georgia win this game by more than 19.5? Yes, of course. But there's not a lot on the line for them here. They punched their ticket. They're in the SEC title game. They win that game, they're getting a bye as the highest rated conference champion. So there's just not a lot to play for here for them. So, you keep your starters in. Hopefully you get the lead. But I think that third, fourth quarter, we're not going to see quit from Georgia Tech because this is clean, old-fashioned hate, right? We're not going to see any quit from them. I don't think Georgia Tech has a shot at winning this game. I think they have more of a shot than they have recently. But I don't know. I just don't like Georgia with laying this many points in a game that doesn't mean a lot to them. And the fact that they've been 3-8 against the spread this season.
Yeah.
They beat some good teams to get there. Clemson, Texas, and Tennessee. But 10.5 is the biggest line that they've covered this season. So I don't like it for Georgia. I'm going to take Georgia Tech in some points, which, this point of the year, we should know the line should be good, but I feel like we're building in a little bit of buffer here. Vegas is anyway. So yeah, give me the Yellow Jackets in this game.
Yeah, UGA has won 6 straight in this rivalry, but they won just 31-23 last year. I would argue this Georgia team is a little bit worse than last year's without Bowers, without Ladd out there, and I would argue that Georgia Tech, when they're healthy, I think they're one of the better teams in the ACC. So I agree with you. I don't think I will be betting this until do you think it could get to 21.5? I think maybe then I would grab Tech.
Hasn't moved a lot, and tickets are split. They are between.
Okay.
I think cash is on Georgia, tickets are on Georgia Tech. It might be flip flopped, but it's definitely down the middle here. I think this is just too many points. Georgia hasn't been covering these giant lines. They didn't cover this against Mississippi State.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're covering against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech. I've doubted Georgia Tech before too, and they have screwed me a couple times already this year. So I'm done. I'm taking Georgia Tech in the points.
Okay, let's go ahead. Let's bust open the Saturday slate with the Palmetto Bowl in Death Valley. Number 12 Clemson is a 2.5-point favorite over the 16th-ranked Gamecocks. South Carolina, they've been one of the biggest risers. I think we can both say that over the second half of the season. They lost in one-score games early to LSU and Bama, and then they were blown out by Ole Miss. I think that's the one big blemish on their resume. They have won 5 straight, though, and that includes wins against A&M, Vandy, and Mizzou. They're 8-3 ATS on the season. Lenora Sellers, Raheem Rocket Sanders have helped give this the 32nd ranked scoring offense. And also, they've been really good on the defensive side as well. Clemson, they are 9-2, 7-1 in the ACC, but they were smacked in week 1 by Georgia in their only game against an SEC opponent. They've also failed to cover in 4 of their last 5, including last week against the FCS team, the Citadel.
Citadel, yeah.
That's an academy school. Am I right on that?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah, and I mean, Cade Klubnik, I think, has been really good, Boggs. Sixth best total offense in the country, led by Klubnik. But I feel like they're just average on defense anymore. 49th in total defense. Clemson, they have won 8 of the last 9 against South Carolina, but SC did win in 2022. Boggs, what do you think we see down along Lake Hartwell on Saturday?
Yeah, I think this is a game where Clemson's recruiting issues finally catch up to them here. And that might have actually already happened against Louisville, but the schedule hasn't been impressive, in my opinion, for Clemson. Clemson lost their 2 hardest games this season they played. They played Louisville was their second hardest. Georgia was their first hardest. They lost both those games. The South Carolina defensive line, to me, is still the strongest group in this game, and we have a banged-up offensive line for Clemson. I'm taking South Carolina on the money line here. I think they win this game straight up. I mean, it's a short spread anyway, so it's not like a huge revelation here. But neither of these teams were impressed. I don't care about your win against an FCS team, especially when you don't cover. I mean, Clemson should have lost to a bad offensive Pitt team. Right, Eli Holstein was banged up in that game, or I can't remember if he played in that game or not. That might have been a Yarnell game, but Klubnik had that big 50-yard run for them to win that game at the end. Like, they should have lost that game. I think South Carolina is probably the second hardest opponent that they're going to play this year behind Georgia. And I think South Carolina rolls in this game. I think this defensive line eats Klubnik's lunch. I just don't like Clemson this year. I think South Carolina wins this game straight up.
Okay. Do you think 2.5 is probably where this thing stays by Saturday?
Yeah, I don't think it moves too much. Although cash is in favor of South Carolina, tickets are still on Clemson. So I think it's going to stick somewhere in this range.
Okay, let's head back to Columbus, Ohio for the 120th edition of the game. The second-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes are 20.5-point favorites over the Michigan Wolverines. Will Howard and those no-good Buckeyes, they covered last week against Indiana to get to 6-5 ATS. That is courtesy of the top-scoring defense and the 10th-ranked scoring offense in the country. There's no way around it. It's been a pretty down year for the Wolverines. They're 6-5 straight up, 4-7 ATS, and 4-4 in Big Ten play. The offense has been absolutely anemic, 128th in total offense, and the defense has regressed because they've been put in tough spots, right? And still, I think Michigan's kind of getting it together. They covered against IU a couple weeks ago. They also beat Northwestern 50-6 last week. Michigan has won and covered in 3 straight games against Ohio State. Boggs, is this my absolute disdain, my absolute hate for Ohio State getting the best of me? But is there value on the Wolverines? And could there be at a certain number though?
No, there's not. I don't.
There's no number. There's no number.
There's no number for me that I would not take Ohio State here. I mean, look. I think we did just see the most impressive performances of the year for both these teams, right? The difference is Michigan was against Northwestern, right? They scored 50 points. They hadn't put more than 30 up on the board at all this year. Week 1, they scored 30 against Fresno State. That was it. But Ohio State's was against an undefeated Indiana team that had been thrashing people. And also, let's not forget the hatred in this game. This is a hateful game here, and it always has been, and it always will be, which I think a lot of people look at this line and go, in a hateful game like this, you can't lay this many points. Well, when Michigan has beat you 3 years in a row and embarrassed you, I think you can lay those points, because I think Ohio State, we saw it at the end of the Indiana game when they punched that one in. That was the start of it. That was the start of the hateful week for Michigan. We're going to see all of it come out for Ohio State. 3 years of frustration come out here for Ohio State. So for me, I like this team in Michigan. I think they are probably better than their record, and I like that they look better now than they did earlier in the season. They're not in Ohio State's league this year. So I would be happy to eat my words. And to see Ryan Day lose, I think would be hilarious.
Yeah.
In this game, like, you just, for whatever reason, Michigan has your number, but I just don't see how it happens. They don't have enough on offense, and we thought Indiana had enough on offense to keep pace a little bit. I mean, they had nothing. They had no answer, and I think that's the same thing that we're going to see from from Michigan here is they're just not going to have enough juice on offense to catch up. I think Ohio State starts running away with it late, and I think they win going away. So give me the Buckeyes.
I have to let the people know what happened to me for some context. I had a 16.5 alternate total that I bet with a boost, and I ended up getting in the back door. Boggs, you sent me the GIF, like leave the back door open. I got in the back door with Indiana scoring late in that one, and then Ohio State, if they would just kneeled it at the one after Trayvon Henderson slides at the one, like gentlemen, Kirk Cignetti not calling any timeouts. He's waving the white flag. And they had to, not only did they go in and score a touchdown and undo my back door, but then they did the cigarette celebration stomp out right on my heart. Right on my heart, Boggs, and my wallet.
Yeah, it's a tough one, getting backdoored like that. But bad beats happen, man. This week is the most important week because it's the next week. Let's get some money this week. Let's go.
And I wanted to ask you, would you see any value on the over? I get that this Michigan offense has been pretty bad this season. They are starting to get somewhat back in rhythm, though. And the average points scored in the last 10 games of the game, 69.1. OSU showed us last week they can score on offense, they can score on special teams, and they'll never be content winning by 16. I can promise you that.
I mean, I think that Ohio State could get most of this over. So yes, I would.
43? 43 is a low number. This might be my favorite play.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. Well, you talked me off the Wolverines, but I'm gonna keep at it with the over there. I think we'll now round out the noon slate in Nashville, where the 7th-ranked Tennessee Volunteers are 10.5-point favorites against Vanderbilt. On the backs of QB Diego Pavia and the 39th-ranked scoring defense, the Commodores, they are going bowling for the first time since 2018. Congrats to them and their fan base. Our guy Deepak Chona, the wonderful medical professional we do the Sunday night live stream with on Fantasy Pros, he is a big Commie fan, so congratulations to him. They upset Bama back in early October. They also had 1-score losses to Mizzou, Texas, and most recently LSU. Tennessee, they also beat Bama this year, but they do have losses at Arky and Georgia. They are coming off a cupcake cover against UTEP to get to 6-5 ATS. Dylan Sampson has really helped lead this offense to a top 10 rushing offense in the country, and their 6th-ranked total defense has held their end of the bargain as well more times than not. Boggs, where do you see this 10.5-point line going, and is there any value early in the week?
It's 10.5 now. Well, it was 11.5 last night, so we can see where it's going. It is heading towards Vandy, but I think the magic is done for Vandy. The stretch of almost beating Missouri, they beat Bama and Kentucky and Ball State, and then they had the narrow loss to Texas. I would put air quotes on that one too, because I don't think there was a lot of doubt in that game until the very end. But then they were smashed by South Carolina. They only lost LSU by 7, but that's because they scored late. They got dominated on both sides of the ball. They let LSU have a bunch of yards and time of possession. I just think the magic is over. Tennessee has too much to lose in this game. So I think they're going to come in focused. Vandy has been a lot of fun. I bet they're going to crush whoever they play in the bowl game. I think Pavia is going to have those guys way up for that type of a game here. But Vandy's pesky. I'm just going to trust that there's too much on the line for Tennessee to lose here. And I think they smash Vandy in Vandy. So I'm going to lay the points to take the Vols.
Okay. I'm excited
and wait
to see.
on it. Wait on it because it's already ticked down a point. So let's see if we can get this under 10. That would be great for the Vols. So
you got a bunch of degens like Terrell probably betting Vandy. So yeah, just wait.
Hey, look, Vandy's pesky. They're a fun team, and maybe I'm wrong because they're at home, right? This is their last home game in front of their crowd and everything. So I get it. They're going to get up to play. I just think Tennessee is too good, and there's too much on the line for them to lose. Okay. But I thought the same thing about Bama last week. So it's in the realm of possible outcomes for sure that Vandy wins this game. I don't see how Tennessee can let that happen. I don't think it happens.
And before we continue, I did want to remind you to join our college football podcast group, sync your picks, and use the quick pick feature on the BettingPros sports betting app, and you'll get a chance to win some free prizes. Elevate your betting strategy and join the conversation today at bettingpros.com/college. Let's go ahead and open up the 3:30 slate in Southern California, where we have the 5th-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who are 6.5-point favorites against the 6-5 USC Trojans. Notre Dame, they've been a money-making machine since October. They've covered in 6 straight. That includes last week's 49-14 win against the previously undefeated Army Black Knights. Riley Leonard, he has had this offense going. They're the 6th-ranked total offense in the country. And also, even without All-American cornerback Ben Morrison, they're second in scoring defense, allowing 11.6 points per game. USC, they've really underwhelmed so far in their first season in the Big Ten. They've had losses to Michigan, Minnesota, Penn State, Maryland, Washington. I'll be honest, too, like they have won some close ones lately against the likes of Nebraska, UCLA, but I just don't see much upside to this offense. They rank outside in the top 30 in all other base defense and offensive metrics, aside from passing offense, which we know is kind of taking a hit as the season's progressed as well, Boggs. How do you feel about this 6.5-point line? Notre Dame has won 5 of the 6 against the Trojan.
Yeah, you mentioned it, Seth. I mean, USC only has really one good win this season, and it was week 1 against LSU. The other tough games that they've
how
had,
good is
Michigan,
that one?
Yeah, I know. Right. Michigan, Minnesota, Penn State, Washington, all losses. And those losses are all close, and they haven't been soundly beat by anyone. But Notre Dame's only good win, in my opinion, was also week 1 against A&M. Since then, they lost to NIU. But what are their big wins here? Louisville? Army, Navy? Are Army and Navy even good? Like, they were good against really weak opponents, but are they even good? Right? So Notre Dame hasn't been as impressive, but what I think this line is telling us, I don't think it's respectful enough for what Notre Dame has done and the just dismantling that they have had on a weaker schedule. And I think USC is one of those weaker teams. They've already clinched a bowl spot. There's not a lot on the line for them in this game. They've been playing musical chairs at quarterback. Maybe Notre Dame is a pretender, but they're averaging 33.7 points in those hardest games that I mentioned. He might get back Howard Cross as well. I just feel like USC is trying to figure it out, and Notre Dame has it figured out. And the only out I see for USC in this one is to pass early, get up, and make Riley Leonard throw to beat them. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Notre Dame can do that. I think that's what is going to catch them in the tourney, but not here against USC. I think they dominate USC and roll over them like they have a lot of these opponents before, because USC is kind of middling this year. So I'm going to lay the points and take the Irish.
Moving to Tucson for the Territorial Cup, the 14th-ranked Arizona State Sun Devils are laying 8.5 points on the Arizona Wildcats. We haven't handicapped the previously ranked Wildcats in quite some time. They have fallen to 4-7, most recently losing to TCU, despite having potentially the best wide receiver in the 2025 class. They're dead last in cover percentage at 18.2%, covering just twice this season. They're also 87th in total offense, 94th in total defense. ASU, on the other hand, they are rolling right now. They beat BYU last week when fans stormed the field before the game was even over. That was kind of a crazy scene. That gives them their 4th straight cover to get them to 9-2 ATS. Sam Leavitt has led this offense to the 54th ranked unit in total offense, and the defense is also 44th ranked. Boggs, are you rolling with arguably one of the best ATS teams against arguably one of the worst teams? Or does this heated rivalry kind of scare you off?
No, this is a fun rivalry for sure, and the oldest trophy, I think, in college football, the Territorial Cup. So, I lived in Arizona for a long time, so I've seen a lot of this, and these teams violently hate each other. I mean, when ASU beat U of A 70-7, they put up a billboard about halfway from Tucson to Phoenix that said, "No pity for the kiddies." So, I mean, these teams don't like each other, and they like embarrassing each other. I mean, when Arizona finally got their payback last year, a down year for ASU, they won 59-23. So I think the foot is going to be firmly on the gas for Arizona State. I think that the better team here. I'd love to say that Noah Fafita and Tet McMillan can do something, and maybe they can because ASU doesn't blitz very well. They don't hit the quarterback very well, so maybe Fafita can come sit back and score some points. But this 8.5, I think, is just not enough. I think Arizona State is going to score every single time they have the ball, and I think they're going to try. They're going to go for it on 4th and shorts. That they're not taking a break at the end, even for the Big 12 championship game. They are going to put it on the Wildcats if they can. So the over is in play, but my favorite play here is definitely on the Sun Devils.
I was going to ask about that over. It's 52.5 points. Looking at what this game has provided in the past, the over is hit in 4 straight, and also it's been an average of 71.25 points scored in those games, Bog. So I feel like there's value on the over. That's probably how I'm going to be playing this. Do you think if you do want Arizona State that you should be waiting for later in the week potentially, or do you think 8.5 is probably the best number we see?
Yeah, I think I'm okay with anything below 10. So,
okay.
And it's 8.5 right now. I see you can get Arizona +9. So it's probably not going to get better. So not enough bets on this game to get numbers, but already half point in some spots. I think I just go ahead and take it now.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get to the Iron Bowl, where the Alabama Crimson Tide are 11.5 point home favorites against the Auburn Tigers. Auburn, they are 5-6. They're within 1 game of a bowl game. And they're coming off their biggest win of the season as well, beating A&M at home last week to get to 6-5 ATS. Alabama coming off maybe one of the most embarrassing losses in a long time for the Tide, losing 24-3 to Oklahoma. Bama also 6-5 ATS, but Auburn actually ranks higher in total offense and total defense. Boggs, does this 11.5 point line seem long for a game that's come down to a field goal in 3 of the last 5?
I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know what's going to happen in this Iron Bowl. This is always a wacky game. I'll say that Alabama has been much better at home than they have been on the road this year, and they get this game at home. Auburn is in an ultimate letdown spot after beating A&M last week. Impressive win there. But, I mean, this is for a bowl berth for Auburn. And you can officially, which I think Alabama's already out, but you can officially bounce Alabama with a win here. So, all that being said, I just still think Alabama is a much better team than Auburn. I just do. So, I'm not betting this game. I'm just going to put that caveat on this. I will bet props.
I don't know how you do.
I'll bet on props in this game, maybe some Ryan Williams action, maybe some Jacquez Hunter action, something like that. But I am not going to be betting this game because it's just wild and it's a crazy game. And Alabama won on a Hail Mary last year. Remember, we've seen the kick 6 in this game. We've seen this game go too many different ways.
That's one of my favorite all-time endings to
dude, I remember exactly where I was.
Same. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. I was just like 14. I'll never forget it. Yeah.
Dude, I was listening to it on the radio. I was working.
Oh, wow.
So, and this game is insane. If I'm making a pick here, it's going to be Alabama. But if I'm going to play it, I would sit and wait and see which way it goes. I cannot imagine it goes towards Alabama. I feel like it almost has to go towards Auburn here because Alabama was so embarrassing last week. So, and currently right now, cash and tickets are slightly on the Auburn side. So,
I believe it.
If I'm going to take Bama, just wait. If you want Auburn, get them now.
Okay. In upstate New York, the Syracuse Orange, they are 10.5 point home dogs to the 8th ranked Miami Hurricanes. Believe it or not, Miami did cover as 24.5 point favorites against Wake last week to get to 6-4-1 ATS. Once again, they were led by Heisman hopeful Cam Ward and the number 1 scoring offense. The Orange did beat Cal 2 weeks ago, but then they failed to cover against UConn at home last week. It's really hard to know what you're going to get from them every single week. They're second in passing offense, but 128th in rushing. can't seem to run the ball much, and I feel like they're mid at best on defense. Boggs, are you willing to lay some points here with Miami? I know 3 touchdowns was too much for you last week. Is 10.5 an okay number for you to get back in bed with Mario Cristobal and the boys?
Absolutely not. No way. I'm
Oh.
never betting Miami again with Mario Cristobal as head coach. And they just covered, right? I don't care. If I put my money on Miami, they lose. So I will not curse everyone else's bets. It didn't hit the over last week, which I thought it was going to. So look, for this week, I'm back on the over. And it's because Kyle McCord has looked absolutely outstanding the last few weeks. He has gone crazy. He's zipping it around like he's damn Drew Brees right now. So Miami can't seem to stop anything either. Maybe they're peaking at the right time here before the ACC title game and the tournament and all of that. But I like the over. And it's a huge total. I think it's 67.5. That's what it was yesterday.
Yep.
So it's a huge total, but Syracuse doesn't have much on defense. A lot of their games go over. Miami is 7-4 to the over, so they play more games to the over. I think Miami scores a lot of points, but I think Syracuse does too. So I like the over here.
It's not a bad play.
Again, probably just staying away from this game totally, but I'm definitely not laying. I'm not taking Miami and laying points again ever.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't mind the over just because these are 2 of the better offenses in the country. So agreed with you. That feels weird to say Syracuse is one of the better offenses in the country, but I mean they kind of are. Yeah, at least their passing offense, their rushing offense outside that UNLV game has been kind of poo-poo. But all right, let's move forward. Oregon opens up the primetime slate as 17.5-point home favorites against the 6-5 Huskies in the Border War. Oregon, they're coming off a bye, but they also are coming off back-to-back games where they failed to cover, barely getting out of Madison alive back in Week 12. They have already clinched a spot in the Big Ten championship game, their first year in the conference. Congratulations to them. And it's honestly been done with a great balance of offensive explosiveness and an elite defense. Washington, they are also coming off the bye. They last played against UCLA at home, winning and covering as 8-point favorites. However, they haven't covered in back-to-back games all season long. Does that trend end here, Bogman? Under Kalen DeBoer, this team has won outright in 3 straight against the Ducks. Of course, we know Kalen DeBoer no longer there, and can old Scotty get it done with him and Mr. Belichick?
Yeah, I don't think so. This is normally a spot where I would rely on the recent trends, and that is, Washington and the helmet just intimidated Oregon last year and beat them in both games, and they were favorites, Oregon, in both those games last year. But these teams are so different. We've had so much change in the landscape of college football, and they're unbelievably different. I just can't pick against Oregon. Washington has been struggling with identity. They've hung their hat on strong defensive play, but the good offenses that they played, like Penn State, Indiana, both put up over 30 against them. Iowa also put up 40 on them. I think Oregon had their issues against Wisconsin, but they were also missing their best wide receiver in Tez Johnson, who's supposed to be coming back this week. Jordan James wasn't 100%. He had a ton of carries in that game as well. A bye week is going to help him out. They are probably a coin flip on Jordan Birch here on the defensive side, getting him back. The Ducks have a lot more to play for. They're at home. They're coming off the bye week. But I'll say my favorite call is the under because these teams are combined 7-15 playing to the over this year. So I do think this is going to be a lower scoring game. So I think we see Washington bow up maybe for the first half, and I think we see some adjustments and Lanning and Oregon kind of takes it to them in the second half. So the under is my favorite play.
Do we think the spread moves at all this week?
I mean, I could see it, ballooning a little bit more towards Oregon because I think bets are going to come in that way because Washington just has not been impressive at all. So, I could see it moving more towards Oregon, but I hope it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather take Oregon in this game.
Okay. Let's move to Farmageddon, where the 17th ranked Iowa State Cyclones are trying to punch their ticket to the Big 12 championship game as 2.5-point home favorites against Kansas State. Iowa State has responded since their earlier season loss against Kansas. They have now won back-to-back games against Cincy and Utah. Rocco Becht, he is the man on a plan right now. 28th ranked passing offense for Iowa State, and hoping to expose potentially this Kansas State's 90th ranked passing defense. Kansas State 4-7 ATS. They are led by DJ Giddens and Avery Johnson, though, who have actually been really good on the ground. 16th ranked rushing offense. I think maybe that could be trouble against the 100th ranked Iowa State rushing defense. Boggs, Farmageddon has had a combined score of 77 last season, and now each team's offensive strength lines up with the opposing's defense's weakness. I love this 51.5 point over. Do you as well, or do you like a side early in the week?
I like the over as well, but I think my favorite play here is just Kansas State. Because
really,
we've just seen the wackiness of the Big 12 this year, and I think this would just throw a wrench into everything again. And I just don't think that Iowa State matches up very well with Kansas State. They have everything to play for. A trip to the Big 12 title is on the line here. And it is probably the most likely scenario to happen. But Kansas State is good enough to mess this up. They're 1-4 against the spread on the road. My issue with Iowa State is they haven't been playing their best football, right? The losses to Texas Tech and Kansas and barely getting out of Utah alive, that is concerning to me. I think Kansas State is going to be able to run here. BP is showing the edge towards K-State as well. I think I'm going to stick to that. I think K-State plays well against the run. Iowa State doesn't. It's just not a great matchup for this Iowa State defense. They should win this game. They're at home, so much to play for, but what we've seen in the Big 12 is a big old mess. So I'm going to take K-State and the points.
Okay, I'll be on that over as well. Let's round out the program in College Station, where the Texas Longhorns are 5.5 point favorites against the 20th ranked Texas A&M Aggies. Mike Elko's men, they have flamed out down the stretch, man. They've lost 2 of their last 3 to the likes of Auburn, South Carolina. They're also 3-8 ATS on the season, and they don't particularly do anything extremely well on either side of the ball except for run it. And they haven't been that good at doing that either with Le'Veon Moss, their starting running back, going down for the season. Texas' strength of schedule has been questioned. Everyone's talking about it on the internet, but their defense is not, ranking second in total defense. Quinn Ewers hasn't been as dominant as he was early in the season, but they're starting to really get this 3-headed backfield going. Will that be the key to winning the Lone Star Showdown, Boggs? And where do you think this short 5.5 point line goes?
Yeah, I think it goes towards A&M because to start the week it was at 7. It was at 7 on Saturday night. So yesterday it slipped to 5. Now it's at 5.5. So maybe it ticks back up to 7. There's just gonna be a lot of money coming in on Texas because there's a lot of Texas fans, right? Kind of like betting on Alabama. Like there's going to be a lot of money on Alabama. There's a lot of Alabama fans. So we are going to see that, I think, maybe be the trend. But I think there may be a lot of Texas fans. There's a lot of money from A&M in that area. So I think that it's probably going to stay close to 5.5, 6. I don't think it goes over 7 at any point. I think this is a touchdown game. And to me, we just haven't seen the Aggies play good against strong defenses. Notre Dame beat them. South Carolina embarrassed them. And they struggled against Auburn last week. Yeah, it was a high total, but that was a lot of the fourth quarter and scoring in overtime as well. So they don't play well against a good defense. Texas has had problems against strong defensive lines, Georgia and Arkansas. This is a rivalry game. The atmosphere is going to be insane. I mentioned the price of the tickets. Those people are going to be going nuts. I'm going to surprise the world and take Texas and lay the points. I know everyone's going to be really surprised by that. I just think Texas defense is too good for the Aggies this year. This is a wild game. It has come down to field goals many, many times. So we could see this go either way. This is going to be the most watched regular season game of the season, I think. It's going to be enormous in the state of Texas. It's going to be enormous in the Bogman household here. So it's going to be a huge game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the Aggies have it right now. Maybe they're saving everything for this game. We heard the Freudian slip from Elko last week. We're narrowly focused on Auburn. So maybe they are. Maybe they have been focusing on just this game all year. I can't believe that's the case, though. And there's also a possibility Texas has been focusing on this game all year long. So this is going to be an awesome game. I'm so glad to have this rivalry game back. I will be miserable if Texas loses, but I don't think they will. So give me Texas only in the points.
Okay. And I'm seeing at FanDuel you can get that 5.5 still. So if they do put out a boost, I imagine this is the game they're going to be boosting this weekend. So there's a point. It hasn't worked the last 2 weeks for me trying to do this, but maybe we go back to the alternate total, and you could even probably get them at 2, maybe a 1-point favorite with that boost if it doesn't spread out too far. So just something to keep in mind there. But, that'll do it for us today on the BettingPros College Football Show. Thank you all so much for watching. We will be back later in the week, but before Thanksgiving with Terrell for our picks and predictions show. Until then, like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the BettingPros YouTube channel and podcast feed, plus download the BettingPros app and sync your sportsbooks today. For Scott Bogman, I'm Seth Woolcock. Take care, y'all.
See ya.